Hey everyone and welcome back. Today we're really diving deep into The Mistakes That Make Us by Mark Graban.
Oh, yeah, this one's great.
Have you ever wondered how some people and companies
Mm.
seem to just bounce back from setbacks even stronger?
Yeah, like stronger than ever.
Yeah. So we're going to find out the secrets today.
It's interesting because what's fascinating about Greben's book is it's not about like avoiding mistakes.
Right.
Because let's face it,
It's impossible.
we all mess up.
Yeah,
We all mess up sometimes. It's about what happens after the mistake.
totally.
Graben dives into what's called psychological safety.
Oh.
It's kind of like the idea that you can openly address mistakes without the fear of, well, everything blowing up in your face.
Okay, let's unpack that. Psychological safety? It sounds like a therapist's dream, but how does that work? Like in the real world, in a real workplace?
Think of it this way. Imagine feeling comfortable enough to say, I don't know, or I messed up to your boss, and instead of being lectured, you get guidance and support.
Okay,
That's psychological safety.
I like that.
Harvard professor Amy Edmondson actually defines it as a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes.
It's powerful.
It's about creating an environment where vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a strength.
Yeah, so it's less about avoiding those mistakes and more about how we react to them.
Exactly.
Like, take the story of Ken Siegel from the book.
Okay.
He's a rookie congressional aide for Congressman Howard Berman, and he accidentally misquotes his boss to USA Today.
Talk about a heart-stopping moment, right?
I would be clearing out my desk.
Right, most people would.
Yeah.
But Congressman Berman reacts unexpectedly.
Right.
He calmly asks Siegel if he understands why the misquote was a problem, and then encourages him to learn from it, and then literally tosses the article in the trash.
Wow, talk about a power move that throws away the blame game.
Right.
But seriously, that's a powerful example of psychological safety in action instead of public humiliation. Siegel gets a valuable lesson and the chance to grow.
It's true.
But what's interesting is how that approach probably impacted the whole team, not just Siegel.
Absolutely. That one interaction sent a very clear message.
Yeah.
Mistakes happen, we learn from them, and we move on together. That kind of environment fosters trust, and it encourages people to take calculated risks, and ultimately it leads to better performance because everyone's not walking on eggshells.
Right. It makes you wonder how differently things would have played out for those surgeons Graven talks about in the book.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the ones who made the wrong side incision.
Oh, that's a stark contrast.
Yeah.
The atmosphere in that operating room was pure fear,
Right.
the opposite of psychological safety.
Mm.
No one felt comfortable speaking up, even when they knew a mistake was happening.
Wow.
And as a result, the attending surgeon felt compelled to lie to the patient,
Oh, no.
compounding the error.
Wow.
It really highlights how a lack of psychological safety can literally put lives at risk.
Yeah, it makes you realize how crucial it is for leaders to kind of like set the tone.
Absolutely. It's like Graban talks about CEOs and leaders. They need to get comfortable saying, I don't know, and I made a mistake.
Yeah. Which can be really tough,
Yeah.
especially in a world that often equates leadership with always having the answers.
Right. But think about it.
Mm.
When leaders show vulnerability, it gives everyone else permission to do the same.
That's true.
It creates that space for honesty, for asking questions, and ultimately for innovation.
Yeah, it's about creating a culture where it's safe to be human, to not have all the answers, to make mistakes and learn from them.
I like that.
Speaking of learning from mistakes,
Yeah.
Graban talks about a small batch bourbon distillery in Texas, Garrison Brothers Distillery.
Okay, yeah.
They were experimenting with aging their bourbon longer in that intense Texas heat.
Yeah.
Sounds like a recipe for something good, right?
You'd think so,
Right.
but it backfired big time.
Oh, no.
Costing them somewhere between $150,000 to $300,000.
Wow.
Talk about an expensive experiment.
Ouch. What happened?
Well, they were pushing the boundaries of bourbon making, trying to achieve a really unique flavor profile, but the intense heat ended up ruining the batch.
Oh, man.
Now, most master distillers would try to sweep that kind of loss under the rug, right?
Yeah, I can imagine the temptation to pretend it never happened.
Right, but that's not what Donis Todd Garrison Brothers master distiller did.
Okay.
He owned up to the mistake, even though it was a costly one.
Wow.
And here's the important part. The company didn't punish him for it.
Good.
Instead, they embraced it as a learning experience.
Okay.
They even made changes to their barrel design to better withstand that Texas climate.
How interesting. So instead of a cover-up, they got a master class in heat-resistant bourbon making. That's impressive.
It is, and it speaks to a key principle Grabon highlights throughout the book,
Okay.
the power of small failures.
Okay.
And the idea is to test your assumptions on a smaller scale before going all in.
Kind of like that hospital Gravon talks about, where
Yes.
they wanted to address the issue of patients accidentally knocking things off their beds.
Right.
Instead of outfitting the entire hospital with expensive new bedside tables, they started with a single bed and a $20 caddy.
Exactly. It's about embracing what we call iterative success,
Okay.
trying things out, learning from them, and making adjustments along the way.
I like it.
You minimize the risks and you maximize the learning potential.
It reminds me of that saying, fail early, fail often,
Yeah.
but maybe a bit less intimidating.
Definitely. And this approach isn't limited to just distilleries and hospitals. Think about software development.
Okay.
Grabon shares the story of Melissa, a software developer who poured her heart into building this new product only to realize they had built the wrong thing.
Oh, that's gotta hurt.
It does, and it highlights a common pitfall.
Okay.
Getting so caught up in the what we can build
Yeah.
that we forget to ask the why.
Right.
Why are we building this in the first place?
Yeah.
And what problem are we actually trying to solve?
It's like that classic example of the better mousetrap. You can build the most technologically advanced mousetrap the world has ever seen.
Right.
But if no one wants to buy it, what's the point?
Exactly. So how do we avoid falling into that trap?
Yeah.
It goes back to testing assumptions,
Yeah.
gathering feedback, and being open to changing course along the way. It's amazing how a small adjustment early on can save you from a major headache down the line.
It's all about those small steps, those little experiments that can help us course correct and ultimately lead to bigger successes.
Speaking of course correction, remember that story about the KaiNexus webinar where the internet cut out?
Oh, yeah. Talk about perfect timing.
Ironically, the webinar was on the topic of mistakes.
Oh, the irony.
Right. And the CEO, Greg Jacobson, did.
What did he do?
He laughed it off.
Good.
Because in a culture that embraces mistakes, even a tech fail becomes a teachable moment.
It makes you realize how much we're conditioned to fear messing up,
Yeah.
even in small ways.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I still cringe when I think about that time I forgot to hit record during a podcast interview.
We've all been there. But imagine if instead of that sinking feeling in your stomach, you felt empowered to say, hey, mistake happened. Let's figure out how to fix it and move on.
Totally. It's about shifting that internal dialogue from, I'm such an idiot, to, okay, what can I learn from this?
Precisely. And that's where self-compassion comes in.
Oh.
Kristen Neff, a leading expert on self-compassion, talks about how we tend to be much harder on ourselves than we would be on a friend who made the same mistake.
It's so true.
She even shares a story in the book about how she completely lost her cool with a colleague during a meeting.
Oh, no.
And this is someone who literally wrote the book on self-compassion.
Wow.
It just goes to show we're all human.
Right.
Even the experts.
Yeah.
What matters is how we respond to those moments.
It's so true.
It's not about beating ourselves up, but about learning from those experiences and extending ourselves the same grace and understanding that we would offer to others.
Absolutely. And when we approach our mistakes with that kind of self-compassion, it opens up a space for real growth and learning.
I totally agree.
Speaking of growth, Grebman mentions this intriguing idea that intelligent people actually make more mistakes.
It sounds counterintuitive, right?
It does.
But when you think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
The more you're willing to try new things, to step outside your comfort zone, the more likely you are to stumble along the way.
It's like that old saying, the only way to avoid making mistakes is to do nothing.
Exactly. And who wants a life of doing nothing?
Right.
Mistakes are proof that we're living, learning, and growing.
Totally.
It's the price of admission for a life of innovation and discovery. So true. But it's not enough to simply tell people to be more open to mistakes.
Right.
We have to create an environment where that's actually possible.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
It starts with leadership.
Okay.
Leaders need to set the tone
Okay.
by being open about their own mistakes, by asking for help when they need it, and by rewarding those who speak up when they see a problem.
It's about creating that culture of we're all in this together, where it's safe to be fallible and to learn from each other.
I love that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
That's the essence of psychological safety right there.
Totally.
And it's not just about being nice.
Right.
It's about creating an environment where people feel empowered to do their best work.
Right. Because when people feel safe and supported, they're more likely to take risks, to innovate, and to go above and beyond.
It's like that story about Alan Mulally, the CEO who transformed Ford.
Oh, yeah.
He inherited this culture where Admitting problems was seen as a sign of weakness.
Right.
And he completely flipped the script.
He did.
He asked his executives to color code their status updates.
Okay.
Green for good, yellow for caution, and red for trouble.
And at first, everyone was green all the time.
Of course, because no one wanted to be the first to admit they had a problem.
Exactly.
Right.
But Mullally, he kept encouraging honesty.
Good for him.
He kept saying, it's okay to have a red, we just need to know about it so we can fix it.
I love that.
And eventually, the reds started to appear.
They did.
And you know what?
What?
The company started performing better because they were finally addressing their problems head on.
It's amazing how such a simple change, just adding some color coding, can have such a profound impact on a company's culture.
It's true.
It's all about making it safe to be honest, even when things aren't perfect.
Exactly. And that honesty is what allows for real growth and progress.
Totally.
Now, we've talked a lot about acknowledging and embracing mistakes, but how do we actually go about learning from them?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not enough to just say, oops, my bad, and move on.
Right. Graban talks about the importance of digging deeper,
Okay.
of understanding the root causes of our mistakes and then implementing solutions to prevent those mistakes from happening again.
So it's not just about saying sorry, it's about making a change.
Exactly.
I like that.
He calls it cherishing your mistakes.
Is-
Not in a celebrate failure kind of way, but in a way that extracts valuable lessons from those experiences.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So how do we actually do that? How do we
Yeah.
cherish our mistakes without dwelling on them or beating ourselves up?
It starts with shifting our perspective from blame to curiosity.
Yep.
Instead of asking who's at fault here, we ask what happened, why did it happen, and what can we learn from this?
It's about approaching mistakes with a detective's mindset, looking for clues that could help us prevent similar situations in the future.
Exactly. And it's about creating a culture where people feel comfortable sharing their mistakes, knowing that they won't be punished for it.
Right. Like no one's going to get in trouble for raising their hand and saying, hey, this happened.
Exactly.
Because let's face it, sometimes the most valuable lessons come from our biggest blunders.
Absolutely. Think about those light bulb moments you have when you finally figure out a solution to a problem that's been bugging you.
Right.
Often those breakthroughs come after a series of missteps and dead ends.
It's like Thomas Edison famously said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
Exactly. Each of those failures brought him one step closer to inventing the light bulb.
Wow.
So instead of fearing mistakes, let's embrace them as opportunities for learning and growth.
I love that. And remember, it's not about striving for perfection. That's an impossible standard.
It's about making progress.
Yeah.
One mistake at a time.
I like it.
And who knows? Maybe your next mistake will be your favorite one.
I love that idea. Your next mistake might be your favorite one. It really highlights how much we can learn when we let go of that fear of failure. But how do we actually build that kind of mistake-friendly environment, especially in a workplace?
Graban uses this great analogy of tending a garden. You need the right soil, the right nutrients, and consistent care to help things flourish.
Right.
A mistake-friendly workplace is similar.
So how do we cultivate that environment? Where do we even begin?
It starts with leadership. Leaders have to walk the talk.
Okay.
They need to be the first ones to admit when they've messed up, to ask for help, and to celebrate those aha moments that come from learning from mistakes.
It's about showing that it's okay to be human, to not have all the answers.
Exactly. And it's not just about being nice, it's about being smart. When people feel safe and supported, they're more likely to bring their best ideas to the table, to speak up about potential problems before they become major issues, and to be more innovative.
It's about unlocking the collective intelligence of the team, right? Because everyone has something to contribute.
Absolutely. And that leads to better results for everyone involved. Now, that doesn't mean we just let mistakes happen willy-nilly.
Right. Of course not.
Graban talks about the importance of mistake-proofing.
Mistake-proofing. Sounds interesting. Tell me more.
It's about designing systems and processes that minimize the chances of errors in the first place.
Oh.
Think about those pre-flight checklists pilots use or the safety protocols in operating rooms.
So it's about anticipating those potential problems and putting safeguards in place.
Precisely. But even with the best systems in place, mistakes will still happen. And when they do, it's about how we respond. That's where kindness and curiosity come in.
So instead of pointing fingers and playing the blame game,
We ask questions. Why did this happen? What can we learn from this? How can we prevent it from happening again?
it's about turning those oops moments into opportunities for growth.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being better.
I like that.
Every mistake, big or small, is a chance to learn, to grow, and to improve.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the mistakes that make us, what's the key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think it boils down to this. Mistakes are inevitable. They're part of the human experience. What truly matters is how we respond to them.
Okay.
Do we let them define us, hold us back, or do we use them as stepping stones to something greater?
It's about shifting our mindset from fear to curiosity, from blame to learning from the pursuit of perfection to the journey of progress.
Exactly. So embrace your mistakes, learn from them, and don't be afraid to fail forward.
Because in the grand scheme of things, it's not about avoiding mistakes altogether. It's about making them count. And who knows, your next mistake might just be your favorite one. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.